Becky Lynch on this Birmingham edition of Raw recently had a nuclear quote, in her due to her heelish ways, where she essentially kind of mocked Birmingham and used Ozzy's death as like a reference for why Birmingham was so trash, which I thought was funny. I think in the spirit of Ozzy Osbourne, personally, he would have not cared. I think he would have thought, oh, that's funny. Unfortunately, his daughter, I think, got wind of it, since it seems like every major like UK publication has covered it. It seems like, which is kind of insane, but it seems like she took to social media and wanted to air like a bit of grievances with Becky Lynch. Seems like Becky Lynch kind of got herself into some hot water. Kelly Osbourne said, "You are a disrespectful dirtbag." This is to Becky Lynch. Birmingham would not piss on you if you were on fire. Hashtag Birmingham forever. Shame on the WWE, at WWE, for allowing such things to be said about my father and his home. Don't ever work yourself into a shoot. However, does not give a pass for wrestlers to then just be general pieces of shit, I guess. It's kind of a hard line to draw because, to get moments like Virgil taking the basketball away from the kid dribbling, right? You kind of do have to cross those lines once in a while, especially with a line like this. We're really not at that line. Does Kelly Osbourne have 100% right to be as angry as she does? Yes, she's probably still grieving. Like, it's not been that long at all since Ozzy's passing, even if it was telegraphed and he's been celebrated for the people close to him, right? That's grieving is grieving, regardless of the status and when and where, right? Still, though, I don't think Becky was wrong for what she did. I think the same people that would be annoyed at this should be annoyed at the fact that when Ozzy Osbourne was alive, right, he killed, like, what was it, all of his cats with like a gun and a knife while he was like high as hell, and like his wife had to come home to that. That's crazy. That's insane, right? But since I know Ozzy Osbourne's MO, right, seeing Becky Lynch do what she did doesn't seem at all really comparable to any of the things he did while he was alive. People have such a reverence for the dead that it kind of goes beyond any sense of like morality. Like, they could have been the worst person alive, but then once someone passes, it's almost as if they've been absolved of kind of anything they've done wrong, and we should only, cherish the positives, which I think is unfair to the people that have been affected by every part of a person. Regardless, that's a completely different, I think, conversation, kind of in the context of what we're talking about here, right? Like, essentially, Becky was doing some heel stuff. Becky is a crafty, amazing wrestling mind. So I think it's natural for Becky to do something like this and garner this attention. She was just doing her rundown of the town, and it was a great line. It hit super well, and it hit so well that, now it's being run with in the public, which I think is pretty dope. I always love, I think, when stuff like this kind of blows up, because I think it does the perfect job that like this era wants to portray, where like the reality and wrestling is blurred, right? So, Kelly, in a way, unfortunately, with her grief, has kind of legitimized the product. My mind might be kind of twisted for like thinking about it like that, but at the same time, I do think it's weird that in this era, especially with what's on TV and kind of how much stuff we consume and how kind of raunchy and crazy it could be, that wrestling has to straddle this line because people can't, like, they can't separate the characters they see on TV, especially when they're from the outside looking in, it seems like. And maybe it's because of how wrestling is portrayed. It's live. It's not like, shot cinematically like a Lucha Underground type of situation. So there's a semblance of reality to it when it's presented as like some sort of sports broadcast instead of like a full cinematic experience. That is also another reason why people take a lot of what wrestlers say, you know, out of context and also like with a lot more weight. Granted, this specific situation, Kelly Osbourne, it makes sense for her to react out. I do think other people by proxy reacting is kind of stupid. Kelly Osbourne's reacting specifically is absolutely warranted. That's Ozzy's like daughter, 100%. But in general, I don't think Becky was wrong. I don't think Kelly Osbourne is wrong. I don't think Becky Lynch is wrong. I just think everyone else, like us talking about it, right, is kind of ridiculous. Like, there should be really no attention except for like the fact that Becky did a great job of getting heat and really straddling the line. You would just hope that Becky reaches out, maybe apologizes. I don't think she should do a public apology, because then that's just the old school wrestling in me kind of going like, we should try to like, this would be great for her heel persona, you know, to just kind of like, you know, take this all in. But like, maybe like, hey, you know, on the sides, I'm sorry about this. Like, this is the wrestling business. I will refrain from this again, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, this is how we do things, whatever.